Good morning. It's time for block 6 of the Sixpenny Memories Sew Along, and today we are going to do the broken dishes block. If you're doing a 9-inch block, you're going to need 2 of the darker or medium tone squares which measure 5.5 inches, and if the 2 light ones will measure also 5.5 inches. And if you're doing a 12-inch block, just make those squares 7 inches. So that's 2 dark or medium tone, it's 7-inch squares, and 2 of the lighter tone, it's 7-inch squares. What you're then going to do is you're going to place your fabrics right sides together. So I'm just going to bring you down here so you can see. So they're going to be right sides together, and using a ruler and a pencil, you are going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner on here, and just draw this diagonal line there. So it's going to go across there. Now, if you're not confident about your 1/4 inch sewing, what you can do is using your ruler is just draw another line down there and use that as a guide for your sewing line. It's entirely up to you. It's also a good way to check that your 1/4 inch seam allowance is accurate on your sewing machine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring you across to the sewing machine and just bring you up a little bit so you can see it there. You don't want to see all my rubbish. And we are going to sew down both sides. Now I have to confess that this is the 3rd time because my tripod's been working its ticket this morning. So I'm just going to finish off sewing this line here. So it's a 1/4 inch all the way down. And then I'm going to flip it round and sew the other side of that diagonal line. Now you're going to do that with both of your squares, remembering that these are half square triangles, so every time you sew 2 squares together it equals 2 half square triangles. So now we're going to bring it back over to the cutting mat. Oops, I'm going to turn this around. Get used to this technology. Bring it down to here. Now it's entirely up to you whether you choose to cut this by using scissors or a rotary cutter. I'm just going to take these extra threads off because I've just had a lovely little sewing session this morning with this. And we're just going to cut down on the drawn line all the way down, and I'm using the Prim Love scissors to do this job here. So that's all cut down there. And then I'm using the 12-inch pressing mat, the wool pressing mat, which is available on the Sixpenny Memories website. So that's www.6six-penny.com. And I'm setting the seams, and I'm going to press the seams to the blue. Okay. Now you would do this on both of your squares, and that would yield 4 half square triangles. So just because I can, I've got a few extra here. So these are the half square triangles that I've prepared earlier. And we'll pop this one in as well. Now, the broken dishes one, the block, you now need to trim them down. These ones have been trimmed, so can you see this is not quite the right size? So to get an accurate block, we're going to trim these down, these squares down, and I'm going to show you how to do that. If you're doing the 9-inch block, the 9-inch block needs to be trimmed down to a 5-inch square. If you're doing the 12-inch block, then the 12-inch block will be trimmed down to a 6.5-inch square. Now I'm using for the 9-inch block, I can use my 6.5-inch square ruler, but obviously for the 12-inch block, we could still use this ruler as it happens. But if you haven't got one of these rulers, then what I highly recommend is that you buy the bigger one. You buy that 12.5 by 12.5 to start with. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to pop the diagonal line onto the seam. So can you see there's the seam that I've just sewn, and we're going to pop the diagonal line of the ruler onto there. And we are going to cut a 5-inch square, so you can see the 5 inches is in here. It's within my my half square triangle. I'm using the Prim Kai rotary cutter and popping my hand on here. And because I'm right-handed, I'm going to cut up the right-hand side of the ruler. And then I'm going to cut across the top of the ruler. And you have a tiny little bit of waste, but it just allows you to have some accuracy. You're then going to rotate the whole of the board around. And then you're going to pop. And this is now we know this right angle is perfect. So the right angle is here on the 5-inch square. The seam is going up on the diagonal line. I'm going to pop my hand in the centre again. And I'm going to cut up on that right-hand side. And I'm going to cut along there on the top. And you're going to do that with all 4 of your squares. And when you've done that, you will then have 4 perfect 5-inch squares. And all of this allows you to not set yourself up for failure, basically, at the end. So now we've done all 4, we're going to lay them out. And we'll have this one in the centre here, like that. And that one in the centre there. So it doesn't matter whether you choose, you know, where you choose to have your fabrics. Oops. And you're popping that one there. And can you see we've now got the block starting to appear. The wool pressing mats also make excellent design boards because your blocks stick to them. Now what I want to do is I'm going to flip this one onto here. And I'm going to pop a couple of pins in. And I like to pop the pins in where I've seen the seam, where I need to sew my seam so I don't forget. Okay, and I'm going to pop this one onto here like that. And again, I'm going to pop a pin in on that side so I know which side I'm sewing, because I have a tendency to, when I get to the sewing machine, to turn them round, rotate them, and I get them in the wrong place. Okay, so if you want to, you can add an extra couple of pins in there just to keep them safe. And I'll sew this side first, I think. Just get that right angle in. Okay, so make sure that they match in the corners. And they will match now, because if you've cut them correctly, they're perfect 5-inch squares. We're now going to sew down both of these sides. I'm just going to take you back to the sewing machine. I've got a bit of a reflection going on there. I'll just tip you up a little bit so you can see it. And we're still using the 1/4-inch foot. And this time, I'm sewing down this side here. So you just line up your sewing machine again. And using a 1/4-inch foot without a guide is ideal. You can at this stage use a 1/4-inch foot with a guide. Now when you get to this stage here, can you see that the foot would flip up the seam? And this often happens when we're sewing. And you don't really discover it until you've finished. All I'm doing is I'm raising the foot slightly. My machine actually has a pivot on, so when I stop sewing, it raises the foot. So I've flipped that seam underneath there, and then I can carry on sewing down that side. And I'm going to do exactly the same for this one. I'm going to sew down this side here. And as I approach this seam, I don't want the foot to flip it up. So all I'm going to do is, you could use a pin or whatever, a little stylus, and just flip that down. So that's now underneath there. Okay. So we'll take this out of here and I'll bring you back around to the cutting mat. And this time I'm just going to get the scissors and I'm just going to snip that thread there. Pop the pins back onto my prim pin cushion. If anybody saw the start of the Great British Sewing Bee, you'll notice that people were wearing these the other day. I'm using my prim iron, and I'm just going to set both of the seams. And at this point I'm going to make a decision that I'm going to press my seams towards that pink square, and that will allow my seams to lock into each other. So this one again is set, and I'm going to press it. Oops, Daisy, she says, just opening it towards that one there. Okay, so now I'm going to pop my block back together to make sure, and just to double check. So can you see now I've got my block in position, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to lie this one on top of here like that. And what should have happened is, and it's worked perfectly, is one seam is going to the left and one seam is going to the right. And just to double check that they're in the right position, I'm just going to pop a pin through. So the pin's gone through on the stitching line. It's a nice fine pin. These are the flower head pins that we have from Prim. The hearts and butterflies are not flowers at all. And we are going to pop a pin in that end. And then just to be absolutely sure so it doesn't move, I'm going to pop a pin in this end. And then I'm going to take it back to the sewing machine and we're going to sew down this side here. So we'll come back to the sewing machine there. And again, it's still a 1/4-inch seam allowance. And we are going to sew all the way down that side. Just take your time when you're starting. Get that pin out. Sew all the way down the side. Just making sure that all the seams are lying nice and flat. And if you're making several of these, this would make a lovely quilt. And obviously you could do this as it's a bit of a factory setting where you could just produce one after the other, just do the same technique. I quite like sewing in batches. I might make 5 or 6 blocks at the same time. You just feel as if you're progressing. Now at this point here, if I open this up, what would happen is I'd get a lot of bulk in this middle section here. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to set my seam. So set the seam there, and then I'm going to open it up. And what I'm going to do is I want these seams to go around in a circle. So I'm going to cut into the seam just there. You need a sharp pair of scissors. These are the Prim Love scissors, and they're cut to the very end. So I'm cutting up to the stitch line, but I'm not cutting through it. Doing that one there. And now when I lie this back down, what I want to do is I want this seam to go here. This seam's going to go this way, so they're going in a clockwise direction, and this part in the middle is just going to open itself up. So what I tend to do is just use a pin, or you could use a stylus, a brad, or you could use the end of your seam ripper, and I'm just going to open that up there like that, and I want this one to come down. I want this to open, so I'll just open that up there. This one is already going that direction, and this one is going up over. Okay, so can you see we've got that clockwise direction there? Now I can flip this over, and I've got a lovely, I haven't got a lot of bulk in the centre, which is what I'm wanting. Just give it a bit of a press. Okay, and press, don't iron. That's it, lovely. And you have got yourself a broken dishes block. So I hope that helps. Let me see how you get on. I'll just turn me back up here again. Next Saturday, the next block will be released, which is block 7. If you've missed any of the blocks, of course, you can catch up with them. They're all 1 to 6 will now be up there. As I say, please join in. We go Facebook Live every Saturday at 10 o'clock if you want to watch there as well. And if you want to visit our website, then please do. It's www.six-penny.com. Sign up for a newsletter and you will receive a 15% discount on anything you buy. So until the next time, thank you and goodbye.